Now we know the Most High, He created the stars also. And these were among the lights that were created for signs and for seasons. If we read Matthew 2 and 10, this is the account of the men who witnessed the sign that was foretold of the Savior to come, of Christ. And it says, when they saw the star, they rejoiced. They rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they were coming to the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down. I'm going to go up a little bit here. So I'm going to just go with this for now. There's another precept that actually goes more into what this particular star was doing. I'll get into that later. But this was the sign. You see, from the way I understand Torah and tie it back into the New Testament scriptures, the sign was not so much the child being born of a miraculous or the miraculous conception, or I forget the terminology that's used for that. But the emphasis was placed on a virgin having a child without having had intercourse. You can see, and I know there's different beliefs on this. I don't believe in that particular virgin birth. All right, because the breakdown of the virgin in the Greek just meant a woman, a young woman of marriageable age. And this is why, I'll have to get into this at another time, but it was just a perversion of the scriptures. But the sign more so had to do with the star of Christ being seen in the east. So it did definitely serve the purpose that we read here in Genesis. Another problem that we have with this is that if they're lights, right, this is different from planets. Okay. This is a whole other topic that we're going to have to get into tonight, because the scriptures don't mention planets, right?
Right.
Not in the sense that we were taught. The scriptures do mention the word in the Greek planetes, and it means something different. And we're going to touch on that too. So let's go back here to Genesis. It says, now here's some points that we need to go over here. It says, regarding these two great lights, the word sun and moon are not used here. The words don't appear in the Bible until Genesis 15 and Genesis 37. And it says, if this present passage is talking about literal light, about the literal sun and moon, this would have been a natural place to use these words, right? And we're talking about the Hebrew words of shemesh, or sun, or yaref, or moon. And we're to ask ourselves, how is it that these two great lights were supposed to rule? Okay, this is another thing. The terminology that's being used here is that they rule over the day and rule over the night, or ruling over particular areas. So now you got to ask yourself the question: if these are just, inanimate objects or just burning gases light years away, how is it that they have now the ability to rule? So going back and breaking down, each verse one at a time, kind of paints a different picture of what we've been taught. One second here, I'm gonna.
Okay.
Okay. So, getting back over here, we left off at Genesis 1 and 14. We go to Genesis 1, 15 and onward. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. So again, we have a problem because these are being described as light. Keep that in mind. There was a documentary that came out in the 90s on Fox, and there have been many since. And there's some great YouTube documentaries out there discussing, did we go to the moon or did we not? The reason why it's being questioned is because of inconsistencies with the lighting and the shadows that were being created. Inconsistencies with dates, with times, that all of this wonderful technology was supposedly have, been sent up to the moon. There are some massive concerns with the technological ability of the United States, and anyone else for that matter, to carry out these functions at that particular moment. And what it's now looking like, because there are, video, or I would say video evidence has been released of the photos being doctored. Okay. And it's very detailed, maybe for another time to go into the who, what, when, where. But to make a long story short, the astronauts that were supposed to have been up on the moon were caught, with, I guess there was a picture out there where an astronaut is supposed to have been on the moon, and in the reflection of his visor, he sees another astronaut. And at that particular moment, there was nobody else that was supposed to be up there. You'll see pictures where the crosshairs are actually behind objects, which, if we know anything about photography, the crosshairs is an effect that's on the lens itself in the camera, and it's an impossibility for something like that to be behind an object. Okay, you have the fact that the lunar lander, it was tested 3 days or a few days prior to the launch date and failed and nearly killed with the test pilot of the vehicle. Failed miserably. But, miraculously, they're able to resolve these issues and get this device up to the moon in a timely manner. So, when you start analyzing all of the information, it becomes, and I would say if you just take a 5-minute look at some of this, it becomes clear that there's some deception going on.
So, if we can, I want to briefly stop there for a minute and just ask a few questions that do come to mind. The first one, just being a fan of Dr. Kent Hovind, I am very familiar with what a lot of young Earth creationists term the canopy theory, which I believe was first formulated by Henry Morris, if I'm not mistaken. Now, the canopy theory, to make a long story short, states that there was either a water or ice, which is, of course, just cold water, canopy over the Earth in the ancient times, and that this canopy fell during the time of the flood, thus, being a result of the 40 days, 40 nights of rain. Now, Dr. Hovind, where he differs with Dr. Morris on this, is saying that the canopy was ice, which would, of course, make it line up with Josephus's statement of being crystalline. So my question to you would be, of course, because, of course, he is talking about that in the context of what NASA does currently believe, right? That we made it to the moon and that the planets were all, just the whole 9 yards, the full narrative. So, what would you say to that kind of an objection? That the canopy was first off, and second off was a ice canopy that fell during the time of the flood.
I would say that, in my studies, early on in Genesis, you can see that the word for the wording, because what happens is the English language is not as rich as many other cultures, Hebrew being the main point of contention here.
Definitely true.
But the Hebrew tells you that the Most High actually he formed this as if somebody was hammering out a sword. If somebody is familiar with metalworks and things like that. So the imagery that we're getting is that this is something that was formed. It's something solid. And the other thing I would have to say with that is, Colossians 2:8 tells us, don't let any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit. So what's happening here is we kind of come up with these theories, right? When we start going into science, we'll understand quickly that Einstein and all of his cohorts never said that gravity, the concept of gravity, was anything more than a theory. And once you start realizing that, you can kind of release yourself and be a little more liberal with your studies. And when I mean study, is Bible studies, because the scriptures also tell us, be admonished of the making of many books, right? Because I can come up with the books, hundreds, thousands of pages of information, and write of something as if, I was an expert on it, or write a fiction novel with such detail that it may appear to somebody who was unaware that it was a work of fiction, it may appear to be correct. And I think this is exactly what's happening. So all I try to do is go into the Hebrew text and utilize the ancient sources to see how they understood things. Because as we talked about earlier, Satan deceived the whole world. And the word that's being used for world there, it's not talking about a nation or a particular landmass. It's talking about the entire world. So I think we don't think about it sometimes. How can the whole world be deceived? How is that possible? Well, I'll tell you, this is one of the ways that it happened. When we start analyzing these photographs, the timelines, and looking at did we go to the moon or not, like I said, you can look at it for about 5 minutes, and you can see it was a technological impossibility. And if we believe the scriptures, all we have to do is think back to the Tower of Babel. They were attempting to reach the heavens. And as a result of this, the tower came down, nations were divided, and the languages were confused. So did God since change his mind on this and allow a buggy with tinfoil wrapped around it to now escape, reach the heavens? So,
right.
I like to ask myself those questions, and once you get into it, you quickly realize we got to take a step back and kind of go into this a little bit deeper. Once I personally did that, I understood that the moon landing did not occur as early as 14 years old. I remember doing a project on it or a presentation on it in school, And, half the class was divided on it and thought it was a great presentation and knew I was bringing up valid arguments with the information we had been given. But we're just, most people don't question the status quo. It's a taboo type of thing to do. You don't want to be labeled a conspiracy theorist or someone who wears a tinfoil hat. So it's just one of those things that just kind of falls by the wayside, and we just say, yeah, it could be, but we'll never know, and life just kind of goes on.
Well,
again, for me, once I found out that the moon landing was a hoax, for some strange reason, I thought it just stopped at the moon. 2 years ago, once I started looking at, the mission with the Mars rover, the photographic evidence, if you want to call it that, what that really is. And it basically boils down to, I will personally give, and I'm on record doing this, $2,000 to anybody who can produce a real photograph of any of the so-called planets that NASA has been studying all these years. And other people have put up this challenge, and to date, nobody has been able to do this. Why, yeah? Well, it's because all of the images of, Pluto, Mars, Venus, Saturn, all of them are CGI renderings, which is basically, a computerized artwork. And when you start telling people this, they say, "Oh no, you're just a conspiracy theorist." No, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. We have NASA officials on record, and you can go and look this up on Google or YouTube. They're on record stating that that's exactly what we're looking at. We're looking at CGI photographs, and their claim is that the satellites that they have up there can only produce ribbons of photography, which now have to come down and be compiled to get this image. So, unlike, these guys are billions of dollars in on this research. We're supposed to have state-of-the-art technology. We have cell phones that can take better pictures than cameras 10 years ago. And all of a sudden, we've got to deal with these ribbons of photography that now have to be formed into a computer rendering of what these planets look like. The ISS. There's apparently a live feed that you can go to now on YouTube. But if you just pay attention to details, see, that's the thing here. My background in investigations and law enforcement, it comes in handy when doing this kind of work. I think with religion, a lot of us, we get, kind of emotionally tied into it versus stepping back and analyzing the information that we're looking at objectively to hold on to one or more belief systems. Once you're able to let all of that go, you're able to take in this information and compare it against what you've been taught or what you thought to be true at some point in time. So this is how I operate. Now, when I looked at the ISS feed, I urge anybody who's listening now or who stumbles across this later, go ahead and do a Google search. Search out the ISS as it goes over the Earth in the night sky, and see if there's something that looks kind of peculiar or strange with that feed. It kind of goes slowly over the Earth, and what you will notice is it'll move across the whole continent, and you'll see city lights on. You'll see lights all over the place, and nobody is switching their lights off. Now, mind you, this is a time-lapse type of photography that's going on. You would think that somebody would be switching their lights off at some point, but you'll notice lighting in the same areas constantly or consistently as it slowly goes over all of the land masses.
And by the way, just very briefly, for those of you who may not know, by ISS, International Space Station is what's being referenced there. For those of you who may not know what that acronym means, I assume most of you probably do, but just in case, go ahead.
Yes, thanks. And, so this, you'll start to notice things like that. Or the big one that stands out to me is, they're always eager to do all these operations outside to display that they're working, they're actively, maintaining this aircraft, and, CNN gets it and kind of blows it up. An astronaut has to go outside to attach a bolt, and it's this earth-shattering accomplishment that they're doing, and they go out and make a spectacle of it. And if you pay attention, each time they go out, you'll have anomalies that show up in the video footage. For example, there's video footage of bubbles and things like that appearing in the video feed. And so you ask yourself, well, what are bubbles doing up here with these astronauts? Well, if anybody knows about NASA, you'll know that they do have a training facility where they take astronauts, and this is the narrative we've been given. They take them there to train underwater to simulate, weightless environments. Or, could it be that they're taking astronauts there to film these spacewalks and film these missions underwater? Because why else would we have bubbles going through this live video feed? There was an article released about a NASA astronaut that almost drowned to death. How do you drown in space? It's completely ridiculous. So when you take it all in, it doesn't add up. It really doesn't. Another easy one to catch is when they do these live feeds, you'll look over the top of the Earth. Now, you'll never see the actual spherical ball that they say we're living on. You'll never see it. Again, you'll see CGI renderings. There's a great meme that's out there, and I think it compares 6 different renditions of the Earth, of the globe, and each one of them looks different. And this is over, the span of 20 years. From the blue marble picture, the iconic picture that you'll see in textbooks and all over the place, it's a perfect marble, perfect ball. But then you'll have, people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is nothing more than an actor. But he will, he's NASA's physicist, and he'll come out and tell you that the Earth is actually a pear shape. So wait a minute. If it's a pear shape, then why are we looking at 6 different pictures over the span of 20 years that all look different in color? The land masses are different in size on each and every one of these, and they're not consistent. Why would that be? And you're being told that it's pear shaped. So how come we don't see an artist rendering of a pear? So you start to notice these little things. Another example is the stars. Okay, the ones we just read about in Genesis, the first chapter. Now, mind you, these stars are visible everywhere on Earth. Okay, not all of them are visible with the naked eye, but for the most part, we can go out on a clear night sky and see a star-filled sky. Right. However, when they go up to do these missions in the International Space Station, you'll look in the background and you won't see one star. You'll look at, photographs from these so-called satellites that they have up there, and again, you won't see one so-called star or satellite. We're supposed to have thousands of satellites that are up there orbiting, and you would think at some point during this footage you would see a handful of satellites whiz by. Never happens. So once you start thinking critically about why none of this makes sense, right? You're going to notice that this whole thing has been nothing but deception. Do we have something up in the heavens? Well, I have to answer these things with scriptures. There are scriptures that suggest Satan has figured out a way to occupy some space in the heavens, which is the sky. So as far as NASA goes, they're on record saying that they can't go back to the moon, and the excuse is that they've lost some of the technology that allowed them to go there. So this is why we don't go back to the moon. There's astronauts saying that we can't pass the Van Allen belt. And you say, wait a minute, didn't you guys go to the moon? And they're on record saying that that's one of the challenges. And there was a female astronaut, I forget her name, but all this stuff is available. You can start searching it, on your own channel on YouTube. Search these interviews with astronauts. These aren't parodies. These aren't independent crackpots that are looking to fire up another conspiracy. All of the information that I'm bringing forth is from NASA themselves, and once you look at it, again, it doesn't add up, but they're saying that they're working on achieving more than lower Earth orbit. Lower Earth orbit is things like the plane that they have that'll kind of take a nosedive. It achieves high altitude, and it'll take a nosedive for about a minute, and it simulates, again, weightless environments for astronauts. So they do have aircraft that can fly pretty high up. However, where all this is leading is you're going to start to find out that they cannot leave here. They can't get out. They wish they can get out, and it ain't going to happen. Like I said, the Most High doesn't change. When they tried to build the Tower of Babel, it resulted in destruction. It resulted in nations being divided and their languages being confused. So if this is the case, and we believe the Most High, that's still the case today. You can't leave her. So, again, when we start going into these scriptures, and we're going to hit a few more here, you're going to quickly find out that there's a little more to the stars than what we're being told. And I'll just say this, too. Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask a quick question briefly before we got back into the scriptures, just to clarify. So in verse 16, we see, and God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. And he made the stars also. Now, it does sound very much like when he says, and he made the stars also, that he is including the sun and the moon or the greater light and the lesser light, rather, with those stars, which would kind of seem to indicate the sun or the moon to me, at least. So what, in your estimation, do you think I would be missing there?
No, I mean, I definitely agree with you there. Another good point with this particular verse I forgot to bring back up is that notice that these are lights. Okay, so we know what light is. We know how it emanates and the essence of light.
Right.
So with that being said, how is it possible to land on a light? Right. We can't physically go to these places. This is something spiritual that's taking place, which, I'm going to share some information on that later. We're going to find out that this ball, and just to kind of backtrack a little bit too, that I didn't say in the beginning, prior to me coming into the knowledge of the truth of Torah, the truth of Christ, prior to me going into that, I was looking at, New Age, Spiritism, I was really interested, always have been, in the UFO phenomenon. You know, and within that particular community, there's thousands of hours of footage out there from cell phones, from older camcorders, older cameras, capturing flying discs sometimes, but in most cases, what you find is that there's a lot of footage of what's called amongst the UFO community orb UFOs. An orb, if we know what an orb is a light. So what it looks like when you start pulling these videos up is a floating circle of light that's kind of fluctuating and changing color. It sometimes flashes and moves very rapidly, outrageous speeds, you know, high speed angle changes, right angles. And just, I mean, amazing. And I'm thinking to myself, well, this can all just be a conspiracy. This all can't, there's something to this. And what I've come to the conclusion is that they're not unidentified. Okay. When we understand what the stars are, that they're not out in outer space, thousands of light years away. They're actually inside the firmament, just like the Most High said. They're closer than what we've been told, and they are living beings. They are ontological beings, meaning that some of these are the gods and the powers. And when we understand, you know, go into books like Enoch, there's scriptures that substantiate that completely, that they are able to maintain that particular form when they fall down to earth. And again, this is why we were told as a child to wish upon a falling star or a shooting star. That's because it was known at that time that it was a spiritual event that was taking place of a spirit entering into the earth. Now, we don't even have to go to Enoch to know that they can take the form of humans, because we see this in the story of Lot, where they appeared as people. There's another account in Kings, where an angel comes as a person and disappears in a flame of fire, back up to the heavens. So when we take all this into account, all of this so-called UFO activity is spiritual activity. Now, whether or not it's benevolent, or if it's demonic, or if it's of the Most High, we don't know, because He created all of them, so they all have the same capabilities. But again, this is we're going to have to go into scriptures to back all this up. You know, that this has been said. So,
all right, and let's do that here now, because we are slightly pressed for time. We got about 20 minutes left. So let's try and move a little bit forward here in the conversation. Now, you did say you wanted to go back into the scriptures. Is that correct?
sure, yeah. So what I'm going to do here, the screen's wigging out. 1 second.
All right.
Asking me if I want to restart for an update. I would kind of further delay things.
No kidding.
So, again, if we go into just a fast track here, let's go to Revelation 1 and 20. Now, we know first, I think in 2 Peter 1 and 20 tells you that no scripture is of private interpretation, which means we have, when we read this stuff, we got to take it literal. Revelations 1 and 20 says, the mystery of the 7 stars which thou sawest in my right hand, and the 7 golden candlesticks. The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches. And the 7 candlesticks which thou sawest are the 7 churches. That is crystal clear. So it tells you that these 7 stars are the angels. Revelation, let's go to Revelation 12 while we're in here, in 3.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head. Now, again, it says this is a reference to the angels of Satan, or those angels Satan had enticed to follow him. Okay? So, again, we can tie back stars being synonymous with the angels here. Another verse here. 1 second. Let's go to Genesis 37 and 9. And we can get more information about how we used to interact with these stars here. 87 and 9. And it says here, and he dreamed yet another dream, and told it his brethren, and said, behold, I have dreamed a dream more, and behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. So this means that they bowed down to someone. So again, when we start reading things like this, the question that should be popping up in our head is, how are these gas giants, 2 billion light years away, bowing down or doing anything? Again, in this line of work, we call them ontological, which means these are actually beings that can respond, take orders from the Most High, interact with people here, and provide the service. Because if we go back to Genesis, they were put here to serve us. Okay? Deuteronomy 4 and 9. And it tells us, only take heed to thyself, and keep thy soul diligently, lest thou forget the things which thine eyes have seen, and lest they depart from my heart all the days of thy life, but teach them thy sons and thy sons. Oh, excuse me, I'm in the wrong verse here. Let's slide down. It says, we need 4 and 19. 4 and 19, 1 9. And it says, lest thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, and when thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars, even all the host of heaven, shouldest be driven to worship them and serve them, the Lord thy God hath divided unto all nations under the whole heaven. Again, now we're in a discussion, in the Bible passage, where we're told we could actually worship the sun and the moon and the stars. Okay? And that we should not be doing that. So again, you asked that same question we went to earlier. Let's go quickly to Psalms 148 and 3. And this says here, praise ye him, sun and moon. Praise him, all ye stars of light. So this is a statement in the Psalms saying or advising the stars to praise the Most High. Again, it's showing that these stars and the lights that he created have the ability to do so. Now, let's see here. Grab another one. Let's go to Ecclesiastes.